Hello everyone, welcome back to Arpita Ki NCERT Kaksha, and today we are starting with chapter number 5, Challenges to and Restoration of the Congress System. Now you must be wondering, ma'am, why are we studying this chapter? Is it important for a UPSC examination? My answer is very simple. You want to become an administrator, you are preparing for an exam wherein you are going to deal with citizens, and not just the citizens but also the political parties. So the answer is simple. Yes, you need to study this chapter in order to understand the history of the political parties in the country in which you want to become an administrator. आप जिस कंट्री में एज एन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर सर्व करने की प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं, ड्रीम देख रहे हैं, एस्पायर कर रहे हैं, उस कंट्री के आपको पॉलिटिकल पार्टी का बैकग्राउंड पता होना चाहिए. तो हमने सेकंड चैप्टर में पढ़ा था वन पार्टी डोमिनेंस. If you remember, we studied in the second chapter about the one party dominance, wherein we studied about the Congress party system, how it was becoming dominant in the sense that the opposition was not strong enough to fight the Congress party. Now in this chapter we are going to not just study about the one party system, we are also going to study about how Congress party also saw losses in the elections and how it restored its power, then how it re-emerged, how it again fought the opposition, and then we are going to study how coalitions were formed. अभी आप गठबंधन की आर्टिकल्स न्यूज़पेपर में पढ़ते हो, तो what is this गठबंधन? What are these coalitions and how they are healthy for a democratic country like ours? We are going to study that as well. So let's get started. Now, when we talk about challenges to and restoration of the Congress system, this is in the old NCERT. In the new NCERT, the chapter is renamed as Parties and the Party Systems in India. Now you must be wondering, ma'am, why Congress system name was removed? Because see, Congress system is also a part of political party. That is why it was clubbed together, and we had many coalitions since 1967. That is why the chapter has been renamed. Here party means the political party. ओके यहाँ पर पार्टी का मतलब क्या है? पार्टी वो नहीं जो कि आप बर्थडे पार्टी सेलिब्रेट करते हो. पार्टीज मतलब पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की बात हो रही है. Now, when we talk about the Congress and its domination, we see that Congress dominated the political environment in the nation till 1967 only. 1947 से 1967 तक हमने देखा है कि कांग्रेस ज्यादा डोमिनेंट पोजीशन पे रही थी. In the second chapter, we also studied that why Congress initially was very dominant, because Congress has been in existence since before we got independent. इंडिपेंडेंस यानी कि आज़ादी स्वतंत्रता मिलने से पहले कांग्रेस पार्टी एग्जिस्टेंस में थी. And that is why it said that Congress party initially, when we got independent, Congress party dominated the scene, because all the opposition parties, there were not many opposition parties initially. It was only Congress, and we as the citizens of India had certain national feeling, nationalistic emotions attached with Congress party. Now Congress basically dominated till 1967. So till 1967 we saw the one party system, which was known as the Congress system. But after 1967, Congress also started facing challenges. Congress started breaking down not because of the opposition but from within also. The Congress, there were so many Congress leaders and members, they were coming out of the Congress party. They had their own opinions, own viewpoints. They had certain points which were not in sync with the aims of the Congress party, and that is why from within the party also leaders started coming out of the Congress party. And then we'll study how Congress party restores itself in the 1971. It re-emerges. Now, when we study this, NCERT book called Politics in India Since Independence, this is the book that we are studying, class 12th NCERT. So we can study this NCERT in two manner. First is in the, from the perspective of theme, we can study it. In the chapter 1, we studied about how unity was important when India got independence, how different nations were integrated so in order to maintain unity in the nation. In chapter 2, we studied about democracy, what were the challenges to establish democracy. In chapter 3, we studied about planning and development, the economic planning. And then in chapter 4, we studied about the external challenges that India faced after independence. So this is the thematic study of this NCERT. Now, if you study this NCERT from the timeline perspective, from a timeline point of view. So in chapter 2, we study the era from 1947 to 67, when we saw the one party system. Congress party was dominant. From chapter 2 to chapter 5, we are going to study the period of 1967 to 71. when Congress started breaking down, when coalition parties started coming up. So this is the timeline based manner of studying this NCERT, and this is the theme based manner of studying NCERT. I hope यहाँ तक आपको points समझ आ रहे हैं. I hope all the chapters are now recollecting in your head. Now you are trying to you are basically revising the chapters that we have studied so far. Okay. Now moving ahead, जब हम इस chapter की बात करते हैं, in this chapter we will come across different terms like Congress system. Then we'll hear about the term called bi-party system, multi-party coalition system. Bi-party system means when two parties are majorly dominating in a nation. For example, we are just taking an instance. Let's say Congress and BJP. अभी काफी साल तक तो कांग्रेस और बीजेपी 2004 से अगर 14 से आप अगर देखोगे तो कांग्रेस और बीजेपी ही ज्यादा न्यूज में छा रहा है. So basically when the two parties dominate in a nation, that becomes bi-party system. Then multi-party coalition system, when multiple parties are forming different coalitions, different groups, that becomes multi-party coalition system. That you must have seen in Bihar also. Okay. Now all of these topics that we are going to study in this chapter, we are going to divide the entire chapter in different categories. The first category that we are going to study is challenges of political succession. After Jawaharlal Nehru ji died, what was the condition of political parties in the nation? Then we'll study the fourth general election that happened in 1967. Then we'll study after 1967 ka election, Congress started splitting up from within. We'll study about abolition of private purse. What is private purse? This has been asked in your GS paper 2 and prelims. तो इस पे PYQs भी आ चुके हैं, ठीक है. UPSC has already asked questions on this topic. 1977 elections and restoration of Congress. This is the first category of sub category of topic that we are going to study. Now the first category, we are picking up the first category now. When we talk about challenges of political succession, we know that in 1964 Jawaharlal Nehru ji, who was our prime minister, he passed away. And after he passed away, there were different questions which were raised up. Who would be the next prime minister? Will the next prime minister be able to maintain the democracy in the nation? Will the next prime minister will be in a position to lead the party with the capability that Nehru ji had? Okay, and the country was currently going through different crises. There was poverty, inequality, communal divisions, etc. So will the new prime minister be able to handle and manage these crises maturely like Prime Minister Nehru? Because we saw that when Nehru ji was the prime minister, that era was a very mature democratic era. Why am I saying so? Because when he used to win the election, now what he did, he also used to give positions and place to those people who were from the opposition party and they had lost the elections. He used to give those people also a place in his cabinet. Basically used to say that I am not against people. I am not against people. Right? When I am fighting an election, I am fighting on the basis of maturity of mind. Maturity of views, ideas. If your views are not mature enough to lead this nation, then you will lose. That was his motto. So basically used to tap into the potential of the intellect of the opposition party also. So for example, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. For example, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was open to dissent. Whenever anybody used to question him, he was open for discussion and debate. He was basically ensuring that India matures, India progresses in democracy with a mature perspective. तो अगर कोई opposition party का बंदा हार भी जाता था ना election, ये उसको भी cabinet में जगह देते थे, क्योंकि ये बोलते थे मुझे उसका दिमाग का potential tap करना है. मुझे नहीं पता वो किस पार्टी का है, किस पार्टी का नहीं है. मुझे उसका intellect अपनी nation को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए use करना है. Basically इनका कहना ये था. तो इसलिए नेहरू जी का जो era है उसको हम mature era बोलते हैं. And that is why when he passed away, there was a big question, there was a big void that had been created, and the members of Congress party were asking who would be the next prime minister who could take on the place of Nehru ji. So the 1960 era was a dangerous decade. Here we had war with China also, Pakistan also. There were certain unresolved problems. Nehru ji died. There was a void in the leadership of the nation. There was poverty, inequality, communal tension, etc. So that was not a very happy phase, a very calm era when Nehru ji died. So at that time, the president of Congress party was K. Kamraj. And after Nehru ji died, to look into the questions of who will be the next prime minister, he consulted party leaders and members. And all of the party leaders and members, they came out on one conclusion, that Lal Bahadur Shastri ji should become the next prime minister. Now, basically, Lal Bahadur Shastri ji was also very close to Jawaharlal Nehru ji. In the last 4 years of his life, Nehru ji came very close to Shastri ji, because Shastri ji was such kind of person who was very, principled, who was very moral, right? Because there are very, certain examples which proves his morality, which proves that he was a very principled man, a man of dignity, honest man. How can we say that? Because he was a railway minister once. So what happened during his ministership? There was a train accident that occurred. Now it was not a very it was not the fault of Shastri ji, because accidents occur, भाई accidents हो जाते हैं, ठीक है, अब किसी का रोक नहीं होता उनके ऊपर, तो ऐसा कोई टेक्निकल फॉल्ट या कोई ऐसी शास्त्री जी की गलती नहीं थी. बट he said, because I am the railway minister, that means I am handling this department. Under my department, if people are dying, if people have died because of an accident, that mistake would be mine. I am going to take the responsibility, because I have, taken the responsibility of heading that area. And he stood up, he gave his resignation letter to the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister did not accept that resignation letter. तो इन्होंने accept नहीं किया था Prime Minister ने इनका resignation letter, और इनको समझाया गया और इनको वापस reinstate किया गया. Second time an accident happened, around 100 people died. He again stood up and said, now this time you have to accept my resignation letter, because now I cannot bear the death of so many people under my department. That is my fault. ये मेरी गलती अगर ऐसा कुछ हो रहा है. Now just imagine, in today's time, a minister who is sitting on top position, anything wrong happens down there, he will fire up the low level ministers. He would not take the responsibility. He would not sign a resignation letter. But that was the level of honesty and morality that Shastri ji had. कुछ भी होता था, ये अपने आप को अकाउंटेबल मानते थे, क्योंकि ये कहते थे हेड तो मैं ही हूं ना, इन लोअर लेवल मिनिस्टर्स के ऊपर या ऑफिसर्स के ऊपर मैं ही बैठा हुआ हूं ना, तो मैं अपने ऊपर सारी गलती लूंगा. तो आवर मिनिस्टर्स इन टुडेज टाइम शुड लर्न फ्रॉम शास्त्री जी's morals and values and principles. And that is why all the leaders of Congress party, with unity and consensus, said that Shastri ji should become the new Prime Minister. And he became the Prime Minister. From 1964 to 66, he was appointed as the Prime Minister. Now you must be wondering, ma'am, the term of Prime Ministership is 5 years. Why for 2 years only he ruled? Because he died. Okay, before completing his term, he died in 1966 on 10th of January. He was in Tashkent, and it's the current capital of Uzbekistan, and he was there to sign a peace treaty with Pakistan's head president. So that is why he basically could rule only for 2 years. Now during his rule also, there were two challenges that the country was facing. First was the war with Pakistan in 1965. That is why he was in Tashkent to sign the peace treaty with Pakistan to end the war. And second, failed monsoons, drought, serious food crisis that was hovering over our country. And that is when he gave the slogan Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, to uplift the confidence, boost the confidence and morale of the farmers. Now when Shastri ji died, there was an intense competition between Indira Gandhi and Morarji Desai ji. So Indira Gandhi, basically she was a daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru. She stood up for the position of being the Prime Minister. Morarji Desai भी वहाँ पर खड़े हुए, और दोनों के बीच में intense competition रहा कि कौन अब next Prime Minister बनेगा. And Indira Gandhi also was a Union Minister for Information in Shastri ji's cabinet. And whereas on the other hand, Morarji Desai was the Chief Minister of today's Maharashtra and Gujarat, which was then called Bombay State. अब एक सीक्रेट बैले हुआ कांग्रेस एमपीज के बीच में कि किसको इन दोनों उम्मीदवार में से किसको हम प्राइम मिनिस्टरशिप के लिए खड़ा करें. एंड ड्यूरिंग दैट सीक्रेट बैलेट, इंदिरा गांधी won by majority of 2/3 party members of or you can say the MPs in the house. She won the secret ballot. And then there was peaceful transmission of power to Indira Gandhi ji. But being a woman, it was not easy for her to become a prime minister and to head over all the senior party leaders. इनके लिए easy नहीं था प्राइम मिनिस्टर बनना, क्योंकि होता क्या है, पार्टी लीडर्स थे, जो सीनियर आदमी होते हैं ना, मेन आपके यहाँ पर मेंबर्स थे जो पार्टी लीडर्स की पोजीशन पे खड़े थे. एंड they expected Indira Gandhi, they basically thought that Indira Gandhi was inexperienced, so they expected her to follow their advice. on the other hand, Indira Gandhi, she was very fiery woman, a very fiery, independent woman. इनके अपने point of view होते थे. She was, fearless. ठीक है, fiery means जो fiery word होता है ना, she was very fiery. बहुत ज़्यादा strong-willed, fiery, independent, fearless woman थी. So it was very tough for her to, just go blindly by the advice of the senior party leaders, and that is why there was a tussle between senior party leaders and Indira Gandhi. Okay, point clear hua? So here you can see the senior Congress leaders may have supported Indira Gandhi in the belief that her administrative and political inexperience would compel her to be dependent on them for the support and guidance. But the opposite happened. यहाँ पर in the secret ballot she won because the leaders who backed her, who supported her, thought that she is inexperienced. She was just an information minister in Shastri ji's cabinet. So she does not have stronghold. Being a woman, itni knowledge kahan hogi inhe, right, of administration ke bare mein. So they thought that she will be dependent on us, right? That is why they supported her. But it turned upside down when she won the election. So now here we are going to come out towards the 4th general elections. Now in 1967 there were 4th general elections that were conducted, and in this time period we see different terms originating. For example, non-congressism, electoral verdict, coalitions, defections. You must have heard about this muhavra, Aya Ram, Gaya Ram. Ram came, Ram went. So all of this we are going to study because these terms came up during the 4th general elections in 1967. Now, during the 4th general elections in 1967, we saw a grave economic crisis, which was very hard for Indira Gandhi government to face. It resulted into decline and downfall in the agricultural production. There was food shortage, poverty was increasing, foreign exchange reserves were finishing off, and there was so much pressure on Indira Gandhi government related to foreign exchange reserves that at that time one of the first decisions that she took was to devalue the Indian rupee. Earlier, $1 could be purchased for less than ₹5. After she took the decision of devaluing the Indian rupee, now $1 was to be purchased at around or more than ₹7. तो आप देख रहे हो इंडियन रुपी की वैल्यू इसमें कम हो रही है. मतलब जहां पर $1 ₹5 से कम में आ जाता था, अब उसी $1 को लेने के लिए सिर्फ मात्र $1 को लेने के लिए 7 से ऊपर रुपए आपको खर्च करने पड़ेंगे. तो ये होता है डिवैल्यूएशन, मतलब अपने रुपए की वैल्यू आप गिरा रहे हो कंपैरिजन विद $. एंड दैट इज व्हाई इन्फ्लेशन स्टार्टेड अप. यहाँ पर इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ना शुरू हो गया, मिलिट्री एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ाना शुरू कर दिया इंदिरा गांधी गवर्नमेंट ने. सो पीपल स्टार्टेड प्रोटेस्टिंग अगेंस्ट द इंक्रीज इन प्राइस, अगेंस्ट द इन्फ्लेशन. नाउ देयर वाज वन स्लाइट मिस्टेक बाय इंदिरा गांधी गवर्नमेंट. When people were protesting against inflation now, she started putting, you can say she used, violence to stop the protest, because she was thinking that the people are protesting, just the protests are politically motivated. The other political parties are trying to incite people, and instigate people against us, and they are trying to politically motivate the entire issue, and they are trying to create a chaos in the country. But in reality, people were really hurt by the increase in price at that time. People were really upset about the poverty, the condition of our economy at that time, and that is why they were protesting. So Indira Gandhi government यहाँ पर ना थोड़ा सा people connect कम हो गया. So at that time during the protest, the people connection between the government and the people and the citizens was decreasing, was going down, and that is why the popularity of Congress government started falling down. इसीलिए कांग्रेस गवर्नमेंट की पॉपुलैरिटी भी गिरने लगी. And that is when the term non-congressism started coming up. You must have heard about Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital in New Delhi. It is named after a very popular socialist leader called Ram Manohar Lohia. He gave this strategy the name of non-congressism. Basically, this strategy includes that we need to make sure that India is free of the Congress party. ये बेसिकली स्ट्रैटेजी थी राम मनोहर लोहिया की. वो ये बताना चाह रहे थे कि कैसे कांग्रेस पार्टी का रुतबा, कांग्रेस पार्टी का पीपल कनेक्शन कम होता जा रहा है, और इसीलिए हमें अब कांग्रेस पार्टी को हटाकर किसी नई पार्टी को जगह देनी चाहिए. कांग्रेस पार्टी indifferent हो रही है towards the needs of the Indian citizen, and that is why Ram Manohar Lohia, he came across the strategy called non-congressism. So Ram Manohar Lohia was a socialist leader, he was a freedom fighter also, and he was among the founders of Congress Socialist Party after the split in the parent party. जो कांग्रेस पार्टी थी उसके भी 2 भाग हो गए थे, ठीक है. उसमें से एक था कांग्रेस सोशलिस्ट पार्टी जिसके लीडर थे राम मनोहर लोहिया जी. He was also the founder editor of Mankind and Jung. This is important for prelims. Known for original contribution to a non-European socialist theory. He was best known for sharp attacks on Nehru. Now here physical attacks, ये physical attacks नहीं, it's not physical attack, basically verbal attacks, ideological attacks. And he is credited with the theory of or strategy of non-congressism, that India should be Congress free. Okay, point clear हुआ? So this was the personality Ram Manohar Lohia. तो यहाँ से from this period started the protest against the Congress party. यहाँ से आप देखोगे इस time period से कांग्रेस पार्टी का के against protest होने शुरू हो गए and new leaders started coming up, against the Congress party. Leaders from within the Congress party like Ram Manohar Lohia ji. Then we had the electoral verdict proving that yes, people were not happy with Congress party. So here the question is, how should a political party resolve its internal differences when the leaders from the political parties are, coming out of the political party and standing against them? So how should the political party resolve these kind of internal differences? अब आप इसका आंसर मुझे कमेंट सेक्शन में दोगे. You will give me the answer to this question in the comment section. If you have a political party and the members of your political party are standing against you, how you are going to convince them? First, it all depends on the leader of the party. Okay, जो leader है उस पे भी depend करता है कि वो कैसे. If the leader is a principled, honest, ठीक है, word of man of his word, in that case also the defection in the political party minimizes. Okay, point clear हुआ? Then sitting and discussing what are the viewpoints of the members who are standing against the political parties. Okay, what are the viewpoints of those members and how their problems and issues can be resolved. Now coming on to the time period when Congress was losing its support in amongst the people of the country. So at that time Congress was facing electorate up for the first time without Jawaharlal Nehru, and Congress faced popular discontent from the people and polarization of political forces. Not just the citizens were criticizing Congress party, the members of Congress party were also leaving them. Okay, now the Congress did manage to get a majority in Lok Sabha, but the tally of seats was the lowest. जो votes इनको मिले थे वो सबसे कम थे, and half the ministers in Indira Gandhi's cabinet were defeated. Like the very famous Kamraj ji in Tamil Nadu, S.K. Patil in Maharashtra, Atulya Ghosh in West Bengal. These were very famous political leaders who lost their popularity and lost in the elections as well. It was a ground shaking, result during the fourth elections. Now during these particular election time, when the Congress party was being criticized by not just the members of the political parties but also the citizens of India, there were coalitions that came up. What do you mean by coalitions? When different small parties come together and form one big party, that is coalition. उसको हम coalition बोलते हैं, गठबंधन. जब छोटी छोटी parties आकर, because independently they will not win the election because of lack of members or lack of share of seats, etc., right, or lack of popularity. So all these regional parties and small parties, they come together and form one big coalition, that is one big grouping, which is known as coalition. So during the elections of 1967 we saw the emergence of coalitions, huge coalitions. For example, Samyukta Vidhayak Dal. In Punjab it was called Popular United Front. In Bihar it was known as Socialist Parties, SSP and PSP. These were the examples of coalitions, and these coalitions basically used the downfall in the popularity of Congress party to their advantage. Now here one more important topic is defection. Defection means when the members of your own party are trying to get out of your party. But the member is not a very, normal common member. The member who has been elected with the symbol of your party. आपके पार्टी का symbol use करके election जीता है. He won the elections by using the symbol of your party. And now he is joining another party after winning the election. That is defection. उसको हम बोलते हैं defection, and that is why Congress also started weakening because of defection at that time. So another important feature of the politics after 1967 election was the role played by defections in the making and unmaking of government in the states. Because of defection, parties were falling down, government was falling down. Okay? And this is referred to the story of Ayaram and Gayaram. So this expression Ayaram, Gayaram became popular in the political vocabulary in India to describe the practice of frequent floor crossing by legislators. Legislators are coming, Ayaram, they are going, Gayaram. They are defecting. That is Gaya Ram. Okay. Now the expression originated in the amazing feat of floor crossing achieved by Gaya Lal, an MLA in Haryana. In 1967, he changed his party thrice in a fortnight. रातों ही रात उसने 3 बार पार्टी चेंज करी. पहले कांग्रेस से यूनाइटेड फ्रंट में गए, देन वापस कांग्रेस आए, फिर कुछ 9 घंटे के अंदर वापस यूनाइटेड फ्रंट चले गए. तो दिस वाज द स्टोरी ऑफ आयाराम गयाराम, द first case of defection at that time, which was very bizarre, and that is how the Congress started falling down after 1967 ka election. So the question is, how does defection affect the political system? Defection से political system पर क्या असर पड़ता है? First of all, you are subversing the electoral mandate. People elected you on a certain symbol. आप जिस सिंबल से इलेक्शन लड़े थे, द सिंबल दैट यू यूज टू फाइट विन द इलेक्शन, पीपल ट्रस्टेड दैट सिंबल, एंड नाउ यू आर misusing the trust of people. You are doing the subversion of electoral mandate by legislators who get elected on the ticket of one party. Then you are finding it very convenient to shift to another party. You are breaking the trust of the citizens. Second, it affects the normal functioning of the government also. When you are breaking the majority, you are shifting to another party, you are breaking the majority, the government falls down. That causes a huge financial loss to that state. Okay, that leads to instability in the government. When instability is there in the government, how will administration be perfect? जब गवर्नमेंट में इंस्टेबिलिटी हो रही है, गवर्नमेंट ही गिर रही है, बिगड़ रही है, तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कैसे उस स्टेट का अच्छे से हो पाएगा? सो इट अफेक्ट्स द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. It promotes horse trading. Defection promotes horse trading of legislators, which clearly go against the mandate of a democratic setup. What do you mean by democracy? Democracy का मतलब क्या है? When you are playing it by rules, fair play है जहाँ पर, when you are horse trading, when you are purchasing MPs and MLAs, right, just to make sure that the ruling government falls down, that is not democracy. वो democracy तो हो ही नहीं सकता. Right? So these are the 3 impacts of defection in the political system. Now, because of all these problems, Congress started splitting up. 1967 elections were disastrous for Congress, and after that, Congress started breaking up. And then and there, the real challenge in front of Indira Gandhi government was the challenge of syndicate. Now, this term is coming up. Now, as an administrator, when you become an IAS officer or IPS or IRS, you will come across this term called syndicate. आपको पता चलेगा syndicate भी कुछ term होता है. What is the syndicate? This was the opposition from within her own party. It was a group of powerful and very influential leaders within the Congress party only, which were trying to dominate over Indira Gandhi. It is said that when Indira Gandhi won the election, when she was declared as presidential candidate, at that time she was declared and supported as a presidential candidate by this syndicate only. I told you in the starting over here, मैंने आपको बताया था. I'll show you the image also. Yes. यहाँ पर मैंने आपको दिखाया था. Here I showed you that a secret ballot was conducted among the Congress MPs, and here they elected, chose Indira Gandhi as for the Prime Minister candidate. Why? Because they thought that she is inexperienced and she will turn to the senior party leaders for their guidance and advice. But it was opposite of that. This senior leaders, the group of senior leaders was known as syndicate. यही वो लोग थे, वो इन्फ्लुएंशियल सीनियर पावरफुल लीडर्स जिन्होंने इंदिरा गांधी जी के प्राइम मिनिस्टीरियलशिप को सपोर्ट किया था, ये सोचकर कि हमारे एडवाइस के बिना ये कोई काम करेंगी नहीं. ओके, these leaders expected her to follow their advice, but Indira Gandhi attempted to assert her own position within the government, and that is why the syndicate started drifting away from Indira Gandhi government. She started sidelining the syndicate, and that is why they stood against Indira Gandhi. So Indira Gandhi at that time, she faced 2 challenges. First was to build independence, her own independence from the syndicate. To not be under the syndicate, but to rule the syndicate, to be over and above the syndicate. Syndicate थे ये influential leaders जो senior leaders थे जिन्होंने support किया था इंदिरा गांधी को. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर इंदिरा गांधी के सामने 2 चैलेंज थे. पहला ये था कि अपनी पोजीशन को assertive करना, अपनी पोजीशन को strong बनाना. Second challenge was she needed to work towards regaining the grounds that Congress had lost in 1967 to overcome the challenge of defection. So she took a very bold strategy, very bold step. She converted a simple power struggle into an ideological struggle. अब ये power struggle चल रहा था यहाँ syndicate को लेकर. इन्होंने इसी पावर स्ट्रगल को आइडियोलॉजिकल स्ट्रगल में कन्वर्ट कर दिया. शी न्यू दैट फिजिकली शी वाज नॉट वेरी स्ट्रांग, व्हेन इट केम टू सिंडिकेट, बट शी न्यू दैट मेंटली शी इज द स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट. हर विल पावर, हर प्लान्स, हर टैक्टिक्स, हर पॉलिसीज came to her support. तो इन्होंने अपने दिमाग का यूज किया. कहते हैं ना, जहां पर आपके हाथ पैर मसल्स काम ना करें, वहां आपका दिमाग काम करता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, स्टीफन हॉकिंग, he used to very proudly proclaim that yes, physically he is not strong, but mentally he could take over hundreds of men. वो ये बोलते थे प्राउडली कि भाई पता है मैं फिजिकली इतना स्ट्रांग नहीं हूँ, स्टीफन हॉकिंग बोलते थे, बट मेंटली मेरे में इतनी काबिलियत है कि मैं 100 लोगों को हरा दूं. 100 हट्टे खट्टे मेरे सामने लोग खड़े कर दो, मैं मेंटली उन्हें हरा सकता हूँ. So she also used this power struggle and converted it into an ideological struggle. She launched a series of initiatives to give government policy a left orientation. तो इन्होंने कांग्रेस वर्किंग कमेटी बनाई, 10 पॉइंट प्रोग्राम तैयार किया और इस प्रोग्राम में जनरल इंश्योरेंस को नेशनलाइज करने का प्लान रखा, सोशल कंट्रोल डाला बैंक्स के ऊपर, अर्बन प्रॉपर्टी और इनकम के ऊपर एक सीलिंग, एक लिमिट लगाई, फूड ग्रेन्स को पब्लिकली डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना स्टार्ट करवाया, पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम लेकर आई, लैंड रिफॉर्म्स, provision of house sites to rural poor, all of these programs for the welfare of citizens, she brought it up. That means she was now trying to ideologically, mentally, take over this syndicate group. And finally, in 1969, the rivalry between syndicate and Indira Gandhi came out in the open. Following President Zakir Husain's death, President Zakir Hussain, he died, so the post of president was vacant that year. Despite Mrs. Gandhi's reservations, the syndicate managed to nominate her long-time opponent and then Speaker of Lok Sabha, N. Sanjeeva Reddy. इन्होंने सिंडिकेट ने गांधी जी के मिसेस गांधी के रिजर्वेशंस के अगेंस्ट जाके एन संजीवा रेड्डी, जो इनकी ओपोनेंट थे, उनको प्रेसिडेंट के पोस्ट के लिए नॉमिनेट कर दिया. And they nominated N. Sanjeeva Reddy as the presidential candidate, as the official Congress candidate for ensuring presidential elections. Indira Gandhi retaliated by encouraging Vice President V.V. Giri to file his nomination as independent candidate. And she announced big policy measures, popular policy measures like nationalization of banks, abolition of the privy purse, special privileges given to former princes, etc. And at that time, Morarji Desai was a deputy prime minister and finance minister. So prime minister और deputy prime minister के बीच में हो गई तनातनी शुरू. Okay. And in India, privy purse was a payment. What is this privy purse? She announced abolition of privy purse. What is privy purse? It means payment made to the ruling families of erstwhile princely states as part of their agreements that they agreed to join India. 1947 के बाद जो princely states थे, उनके prince ने इंडिया को ज्वाइन करने के लिए अग्री किया, तो उसके बदले में हम उन्हें मंथली पेमेंट दिया करते थे. तो उस पे अबॉलिशन लगा दिया इंदिरा गांधी जी ने. And that because of that, many princely states, princes of the princely states, they were not happy with this decision. Okay, because Indira Gandhi was of the view, now why are we are in the financial crisis and we have to pay you money just because you have joined India. Now that you have joined India, now you are a part of India, why the payment should continue, right? So we are facing a financial crisis, rather we can use that money to uplift our country economically. So that is why she abolished privy purse. And also this privy purse was giving special status to the ruling class. And that is the basically an example of inequality. जब प्राइवेट पर्स यानी कि हर महीने हम महाराजाओं को पैसे दे रहे हैं क्योंकि आपने हाँ बोला इंडिया को ज्वाइन करने के लिए, तो इससे एक लेवल ऑफ इनइक्वालिटी क्रिएट हो जाती है. ठीक है. एंड इट एडेड ऑन इकोनॉमिक प्रेशर ऑल्सो. इंडिया वॉज न्यूली बॉर्न एट दैट टाइम. सो टू गेट रिड ऑफ पॉवर्टी, हंगर, इनइक्वालिटी, सिक्योरिटी challenges, it was necessary to abolish privy purse. And that is why by 26th amendment to the Constitution of India, privy purse was abolished. And it was needed to maintain equal rights of all citizens. Equal rights is given in the fundamental rights here on the Indian Constitution. That was the counter argument given by Indira Gandhi to her opponents. That is why I am removing this privy purse, because equality is the basis of this nation. We cannot give a special Maharaja status to certain people, right? That is why it was necessary for privy purse to get abolished. Then came the 1971 Indian general election. So general elections were again held in 1971. 1971 is the same year when Bangladesh also got liberated. And they were the 5th general elections that were conducted since India got independent in 1947. Now, 27 Indian states and union territories were represented by 518 constituencies. Each constituency had a single seat. And under the leadership of Indira Gandhi, the Indian National Congress, that was the INRR, led a campaign which focused on reducing poverty. Now, the target of this election on the side of Congress was to reduce poverty, and that is why in the after these steps taken by Indira Gandhi government of nationalizing the banks, then private papers को abolish करना, she basically gained trust of the citizens of the nation, and that is why she won with a landslide victory, overcoming a split in the party, regaining the lost seats, regaining the trust of the people and its members. And that is how Indira Gandhi was able to restore the Congress party. Not revive but restore or reinvent the Congress party. Revive तो नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि काफी small factions बन गए थे कांग्रेस पार्टी में, but हाँ उन्होंने reinvent जरूर कर दी कांग्रेस पार्टी. So this was the entire chapter. Now let's come to the homework. Question 1 is saying what was the idea behind private purse and its abolition? मतलब why private purse was introduced and why it was abolished? Do you think the concept of private purse was justified in a democratic nation committed to socio-economic justice and equality? Now, this is a very simple, question. बहुत simple question है. In the introduction, first you will explain what is private purse. In the body of the answer will be divided into two parts. First, you have to explain what is the idea behind private purse and its abolition. Then you will explain, is it necessary for private purse to, be alive in a nation which is committed to socio-economic justice and equality? क्या ऐसे nation में private purse का होना सही है? ये आपको explain करना है. That means you have to give your own opinion. Then conclude with a, positive, neutral, basically conclusion. Okay. Second question is saying what is the meaning of the term syndicate? And what role did syndicate, this is syndicate, what role that this syndicate play in the Congress party? Very easy question. Explain what is syndicate और इनका role क्या था Congress party में. So the role of syndicate, during the election of prime ministership and the position of Indira Gandhi, that you have to explain, and later on what they were expecting from Indira Gandhi, that you have to explain. So these are the two questions related to this chapter. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. उम्मीद करती हूँ आपको एक basic idea मिल गया कि कांग्रेस किन किन stages से होकर निकला है हमारे nation में. This was all for today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you and have a beautiful day ahead.